ChatGPTs. Anyone, how many of you have used ChatGPT?
Oh, wow.
Okay. What is that like? This is what the screen looks like. I don't know if I can get rid of it. What happens when I click that X? Will it get rid of the whole Zoom, or can I just use this menu? Okay. So you can see here, if you go to just ChatGPT, it's going to take you to OpenAI. It's logging in all my slides, what each slide will have on it. This is within seconds. And then finally, slide 10, Q&A. I'm done. I'm done for the day. I'm going to go on vacation now because all my slide presentations are ready. Of course, the details aren't in there. But that's an example, and that's what ChatGPT looks like. So, as I mentioned, it is artificial intelligence, and as you probably have guessed, it is everywhere. Everywhere, literally. I just read something on the way over here about Zoom already getting in hot water, if you saw my DE newsletter, about their Zoom IQ, which is their AI model, and their privacy concerns and other things. But I also want to foreground that this presentation is not telling you, watch out, alarm bells, or it's great, use it. All I'm going to do today, and Claudette's going to show you one way in which to use it. I think there's a chair over here, Eileen, if you want to sit over here.
Well, I said for you.
But I do want to inform you about it and how it's being used. And for those of you who ask specifically, how can I check on my students' work that are using AI for everything nowadays? So these are the Open AI founders. Yes, even Ellen. And this is the current owner, who is, what is his name? Sam Altman. He's the guy that showed up in Congress because Congress has now got the eye on AI. So it was a large language model, and it uses a query model, which is when I asked it to create a AI presentation for me, it uses now that users can type something in and it gives back results based on that large data set that it has behind it. So it's founded by all these, and they're no longer involved, and he's the current CEO. And this is what happens when I asked ChatGPT, hey, tell me about yourself. So it will tell you, and all of the models, I can tell you now too that ChatGPT is not the only app that has a template over the OpenAI database. There are others that some of you know about. We were talking about that earlier about Quillbot and Bard. So it tells me that it's an AI language model, and I noticed that in all of these different ones, they all have some language, which I'll show in a different slide, that say some way of, well, I'm designed here to help you. Remember that little clippy? I'm here to help you. But they also have some disclaimers in their language, which is really interesting. It's not there right in the forefront. You saw when I said, hey, make me a slide presentation, it just did it in seconds. It didn't say, hey, maybe you shouldn't plagiarize, maybe you shouldn't use that. But if I ask it a question, it will give me some information. So when I asked it about itself, it says, I'm constantly learning and improving, and I'm clippy. So these are some of the ways, broader ways in which artificial intelligence, specifically ChatGPT, or OpenAI I should say, are being used. You can see customer service, you can see the obvious uses of some sort of AI model. We have our own chatbot, obviously, I don't know if Chris is here, on our website, but they're canned answers. We create a set of answers, whereas an AI model would be predictive in trying to understand what it is we're looking for and what we want. So it'd be more fine-tuned. So for customer service, it has huge implications. For education, this is the one for all. Education, it can create, some argue, intelligent tutoring systems capable of providing personalized assistance to students. You can see the potential there. as a content creator, this one also has, even given during the recent strike, has a lot of people up in alarm about job loss and things like that. Because hey, if AI can create content, journalism, TV shows, books, art, we were talking about too earlier, then, you know, this is a very happy slide, right? Look at all these innovative uses, but of course the dark underside is, oh boy, what does this imply? In business, I'm going to use the chatbot, like I said, to be more fine-tuned. In healthcare, they can use it for trying to get support and give predictive models about diseases and also about patients. And in entertainment, like I talked about, to improve gaming, you can imagine how much more enhanced gaming could be with an AI predictive model. So as I was talking about a little bit before we started, some of us only know it by ChatGPT, that name, because that's the one that the news made very popular, and every story was, oh my God, ChatGPT, oh my God, ChatGPT. But these are all built on the OpenAI. They all have type in your question type interfaces that you can use. They're all using the same data set, OpenAI, that those founders created. So there's ZoomIQ, which I put in my newsletter. Bing AI is very happy with their model. Perplexity, Jasper, have you heard of some of these others? You know, some people heard of Bard, I know you talked about that one. But you might see them more. And there's many more. And they're coming in proliferation. And they are fighting for market space, all of them. They all want to be the next one that people use. So I'm sorry to say if your worry is ChatGPT going away? It's not. OpenAI is just proliferating even more. So this addresses some of the alarm about ChatGPT. Its owner, as I said, went to Congress, and even he said that it has worldwide geopolitical potential consequences, and that we need to have some gates, some guardrails around it. But at the end of course, his report, he's like, but those risks, all of that is just a risk, and it's actually going to be better for us in the end. So those of you who are supportive of AI and these models, that's sort of his position. Another one has to do a lot with what we saw a few minutes ago in our Flex Day, which is that because the OpenAI is built on the data set that's out there in the ether, right? Whatever it is people use on the internet, whatever they have used in their different databases, it brings along all of that prejudice, bias, hate, offensiveness, everything else too. It can. And these systems are saying that they are being more responsible, they are working on trying to get the bad stuff out of it, but it's there, and they acknowledge it. And I think I said down here that Sam Altman even acknowledges that there's some shortcomings around bias there. So that's something to know as well. And I think you guys have probably watched the news and seen some of those examples, which were pretty horrific. So,
Really quick,
yeah,
Cathy,
absolutely.
one thing I learned at a conference this summer that I didn't know was that it makes up facts.
Yes.
It cites articles that don't exist.
Yes.
And I didn't know that, so it's not just the bias stuff.
Oh yeah, no, I'm going to talk about
Oh,
that.
okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, no, it's in another slide about where it will just make up citations.
Yeah, okay.
AI hallucinations.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of it in terms like that. So when you do get this PowerPoint presentation yourself, all of these places here that you can click on to read the articles, and I have further reading and stuff, because like I said, we're not going to have enough time in this session to talk about everything or even to talk about what it all means for us. But this is from an article in Inside Higher Ed, and ultimately the author, Inara Scott, she thinks that faculty are becoming apathetic, that it does sort of feel like this tsunami coming at us, and that we're just kind of like, what am I going to do? They're going to fail. They're going to fail at life. That's on them. And her position is, no, that's not good enough. We need to step up, and we need to maybe change what it is we're doing rather than just give up or be apathetic about it. She also says that she acknowledges that it does seem insurmountable. You just saw how many of these are proliferating out in the wild. And she also thinks it's naive for instructors to think that they could, and I know that you're going to mention some of this, and it depends on your discipline too, that you're thinking, okay, I'm going to harness it in my classroom, and I'm going to tell my students, I teach English, right? Hey, let's use this for rough drafts. Let's use this for brainstorming, but then I don't want you to use it for your final draft. And she said, that's naive. If they're going to use it for that, they're going to use it for the final draft. And I think I mentioned in my division meeting that it can also generate discussion topics, answers. So when you have them where, as an assignment, they have to answer in a discussion section, they can also use that AI-generated material too. And I think this is where Christy, it tends to make things up, including citations and sources, but it's right a lot of the time. And the lesson there is it's getting better by the day. So her answer, or her postulating on the potential answers, and I think we all sort of a lot of us came to this sort of conclusion ourselves. I don't know, was it Nicole? Yeah, you're like, I'm using blue books again. You know, that's one answer, right? If we're worried about people turning in plagiarized material, right? And I'll talk about how there's a difference between using AI as a tool, and I know you're definitely going to get into this, Claudette, versus taking it wholesale and passing it off as your own, just like all plagiarism, right? But she talks about we need to change the system, perhaps. We need to go away from this kind of rote learning where it's so easy for them to pass, quizzes that have single answers, multiple choice, or anything that is going to be a sort of rote learning, I would say. And so she says, instead, if we, and the students also report that I don't really need this in my life. Why are you making me do these rote exercises? I don't need it, and they often turn to ChatGPT to do those assignments for them. So we need to build other skills, in her opinion, the skills that really matter, the skills of critical thinking, problem-solving skills, and also, and I think in the next slide, about humanizing our courses, whether that means using a blue book, whether that means we ask the types of questions that AI will not be able to make any sense of because it's not human, or we have those in our hybrid and in-person classes, we have, or in perhaps a Zoom on a fully online course, we have a discussion real time with students. We do work with them real time. So, I had to ask, okay, is it okay for me to write my research paper? To have you write my research paper for me? And so if you do that, it will give you back the answer. Well, you know, I have to adhere to these ethical guidelines, and you know, you should actually be, this could be academic, you know, so it gives its own disclaimer. It does not want to be sued, the company does not want to be sued. So you will get that, but it's not front and center as far as I know when you go to the site. That doesn't tell students, hey, alarm bells, red, danger, Will Robinson. It doesn't do that. And it tells me that, remember, it's essential. I just think this is so ironic that this AI model is telling you this. Remember that it's essential to do your own research and writing, ensuring that you properly cite and reference all that you use. This not only ensures academic integrity, but also helps you develop important skills, blah, blah, blah. So you'll find that in all of those different models, if you ask, they'll be like, oh, no, I didn't say use my material. But they don't foreground it. So, for those of you who came to this session, and you all have different reasons, for actual tools in which to check your students' work, I'm going to cover that really quickly here. So if you didn't get my previous paper or DE newsletter or whatever I wrote on that, I can show you now. There are some other checkers, but there are the two main ones. A lot of you know about Zero GPT. And then the other one, we already have, thanks to our academic affairs, we have our turnitin.com account. And so people in the public can't use Turnitin unless they have an account. So we have the benefit of having a built-in AI detector in our own software. So with Zero GPT, it's just, and I think I have a screen capture of it, it's just a screen and it has you, kind of like when you do Google Translate, it just has you put in the text and then next to it, it has a percentage of what it deems as AI generated. And you can just go to this, and again, all of these hyperlinks will work when you get this presentation. You just go in there and paste it, and then hit detect, and it will give you a report. It's very simple, and you get instant results. The cons are it doesn't detect standard plagiarism. So it's only looking for artificial, speaking of which. Oh my gosh, Mike, I've turned mine on too. It's everywhere. But it won't, so if you're looking for standard plagiarism, which is not AI generated, right? Someone just looked in a book or a magazine and borrowed the text or whatever, not borrowed, took, without attribution, then it won't catch that. Now in terms of the Turnitin.com model, they both claim, by the way, that they're 98%. When the Turnitin.com model came out, it wasn't super great at first. It's gotten much, much better. They both claim a 98% success rate.
You have a question?
Yeah.
Oh, no, something that I heard recently is that they're saying 98% based on what the latest, like, version of ChatGPT is. So because it's constantly evolving and because there are new versions coming out like every few weeks, then they're always going to be a little bit behind what the last version was because they've now got to update their model for the new model.
It's like the rabbit out here. They're always going to be around. And I think that, I've seen them all the time, I'm sorry. They proliferate. And that's absolutely true. And that's back to Scott's point, remember, that you're not going to beat this thing per se. So you have to kind of think about the ways in which you teach instead. Yeah, you can use these detectors for now, but they're always going to be running and catching up. So with the Turnitin.com one, I'll show you a screenshot of that. But the pros on this are that it detects both parts of both types of plagiarism, and you can create your class in there. You can set it up so that the students are automatically submitting all of their materials, so you don't have to worry about that. And it's just all kind of a nice closed system. Yeah.
Can you submit discussions through?
You can submit any text at all. The thing is also that you have to open up the report separately. Turnitin doesn't have that option yet. You have to look at two different reports. And the students, and this is really important, I'll talk about it in another slide, the students do not get that report. So I had my own experience with that. Both of them are improving as much as they can. And the other thing is that I think only Zero GPT will do multiple languages. Yeah, Zero supports multiple languages, and Turnitin is working toward that. Right now, it's just English. There's some other ones called CopyLeaks, AI Content Detector. All of these are for people that don't have a Turnitin.com account, so they have to go for another paid product. So, yes, please.
But I understand with Turnitin, you have to make the assignment. You can make the assignment in Canvas, but it's getting submitted to Turnitin. It's not like Turnitin's going to read anything in Canvas.
No.
You can't send it to you.
I mean, it's what we have right now, the LTI in Canvas, you can make them complete it, and so it's really literally in Turnitin.com.
Right, but it's not going to have the setup.
It's not going to come back to Canvas.
Right.
No.
So that when, in terms of your question, you set it up in Canvas, but it's using the external tool that is Turnitin. And so they submit it there, and the grade will come back and exist in Canvas, but the and some of it will show up there, but it's not, I don't think you can really do a discussion in Turnitin. So, does that make sense?
Not as like creating an assignment.
Right,
okay. Let's check that out. That's a good question. Okay, so really quickly, here's how to do it for Turnitin.com. So this is a paper I submitted, and you can see up here in the top right, I know it's kind of hard to see because it's small, But my regular percentage, when you go on the turnitin.com panel, and if you've never used turnitin.com before, let me know, and I'll also make sure to add you as an instructor so you can use it, or even if you're staff and you need to use it for some reason, I'm happy to put you on that. You'll get a percentage and a color-coded, severity code of color of what those report is for standard plagiarism. But then when you open up that report, in the bottom right, there's another percentage, and the box is labeled AI. That's where you find the amount of what Turnitin.com says has been artificially done. And in this case, this paper had 7% on the regular plagiarism side, but had 32% AI generated. And you can see here this is all highlighted because it was the entire first page and a bit of the next. And yeah, that was one of my students. So don't talk about the second. Not the student, of course. Okay, so you can read more here when you click on this presentation about how to use the tool and more about what they're doing. There's recent news, like Christy mentioned, about how they're trying to confront these new versions. So in this one, it's kind of hard to see too. I asked, and I just want to show you, this is now using, I think this is Bard. Let's see what I have in my notes.
Kathy, it might be just me, but I can't see that.
I know. You don't have to worry about reading it. When you see the presentation, yeah. Read it down, submit an AI report for me. Just kidding. But this one I asked about Derrida's différence, right? And I didn't spell it différence, I just spelled it difference. And it corrected it for me and gave me the right answer. So that was grad school material, right? Just throwing these examples in my presentation. Okay, so as I mentioned, I did have a student who utilized AI. I had 2 students over the course of 2 semesters that used AI generated work. First one turned out to be, and Christy and I talked about this, turned out to be, it used to detect students' use of Grammarly, and then Turnitin fixed that, luckily. So it's not just picking up helpful, here's help with your grammar kind of stuff. But I want to just, my opinion, I want to give a word of warning to not, just immediately when you get a report and it shows 32%, whatever it is, that you just immediately go to the student like, you're 0, you're a bad person, blah, 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 blah. Because it's totally disheartening. We work hard, and to find out that material potentially is plagiarized in one way or the other, it's disappointing. I know we've all been there. So my own recommendations are to look over your report, both of them, carefully. Sometimes you'll get messages from the AI part. We used to, we don't get them so much anymore, about how it might be AI generated, but it's, maybe not. The first line of defense, in my opinion, is that always talk with the student first, rather than being accusatory. I don't operate that way. So as I mentioned, I had a student who that had that 32%. And so it was an all online class, and I mentioned to the student in the grade book, in the comments, I didn't grade the assignment, and I just said, Turnitin.com flagged your paper for 32% AI, and that's all I put. I didn't accuse them of anything like that, and I waited to see what the student would say, which is what I used to do in person anyways when I had Turnitin.com plagiarism. I would meet with the student, let them explain what's going on, and it could be a completely different story for each student about what's going on. I'll get to, I'll get to that in a second. Okay, so in either of these reports, whether it's the plagiarism or the AI, remember that in the standard plagiarism, it could be that they just, like I have students that sometimes put quotations around a quote at the beginning but not at the end, and it might flag that. Or they just they don't use the right, they've tried to give, they have a citation, but they didn't use quotes or quotes without, you know what I mean? So it's not really that they're trying, but they just didn't do it correctly. The second one, like I said, look for those messages, and I don't think it's picking up Grammarly anymore, but it's always best to just ask the student first before coming to conclusions. Okay, this is what Quillbot looks like. It's kind of the same thing as the other one. You just paste in your text on the left side, and it will give you a report. Oh no, I'm sorry, this is the using of the Quillbot. This is like a ChatGPT, so a student can put in their writing, and it will give them an answer of how to write it much better, and that's grammatically correct. So that also exists. And that's what my student used, by the way, was Quillbot. Okay. So as I mentioned, it was 32%. And if it had been like a part here, a part here, a part there, you know, it would have been, okay, you know, maybe it's kind of common language or something like that, like we did with the other, but it was the whole first page. So I did what I said, I talked to the student came back and said to me, I'm so sorry, I just thought, I'm sorry, can I rewrite the paper? And just totally like confessed before I even had a chance to say anything. And so for us, and again, you can use my example or not, it's up to you, but for us, it was a chance to talk about what this means. It wasn't the whole paper, it was just the first page, yet did pass that material off as their own writing, and so we came to a sort of negotiation, and the student was able to resubmit the paper and had a certain amount of points we agreed upon that he felt was fair. Thought was fair to deduct. You all have your own opinion about how you want to handle that, but that's one of my experiences, and I'm hoping some of you share yours. So how can we, in my opinion, long before AI showed up, because I teach English, plagiarism is a thing, and I wanted to prevent it in the first place. So there are, in my opinion, that's when most of my plagiarism just went away, and I'm hoping the same with AI. I can wish. So preventative strategies include that your syllabus is specific to the fact that you check papers. Let them know ahead of time. I think, I don't know what it is nowadays, but back in the day, students were coming in the 70% percentile from high school when they were asked, have you ever cheated? It was like 70+%. But when they got to college, generally they lose that incentive to cheat for whatever reasons, right? Maybe because they're paying for college or it's more serious to them or whatever. And then in addition, if the instructor puts up those prevention strategies first, statements in your syllabus, maybe talking about it in your class and other strategies that I have on here, then you're gonna do even more prevention from the student using it in the first place. The student that I just discussed was super grateful and like, this is how I can write my papers better, and I, was hopefully learned a lesson from that activity. So if you don't have a policy about academic honesty in your syllabi, most of them that I've seen of your syllabi do, but you might want to now add those words, AI, ChatGPT, specifically, etc. You can have, like I do at the beginning of the semester, another preventative strategy that I use is just like I have them sign up for the Writing Center, props to the Writing Center, I have them sign up for a turnitin.com account right from the get-go. So they know you can set it up, I can show you how to do that separately if you need to know how to do that. They know the class password, they know that all their papers are going to be submitted through there, and that it checks for AI as well. Super good prevention strategy. I only have the one student. Yeah, well, we started late, unfortunately, I'm almost done. And then I also have a syllabus treasure hunt. You can make one of your questions about what your statement is about AI, perhaps. And you can also use class time itself, like Claudette's going to talk about momentarily. And this is where we're getting closer to Claudette's part here, because a lot of teachers, and I just talked with a couple of you as well, use ChatGPT to create lesson plans, create assessments and prompts, and also incorporate into class discussions. And there's one example here that I put here from a teacher at the University of Mississippi, where she had ChatGPT generate an argument that they then all went in and talked about the merits of it. So it was like kind of a reverse. These are some of the limitations that we know of in terms of AI, to be informed as you go toward the semester. It lacks common sense often. If you actually read it. And it shows up in these bizarre, nonsensical answers. It cannot detect all the human stuff, right? Emotional cues, especially sardonic writing, sarcasm, puns. It just doesn't understand that. Or complex emotional situations, human, like I said, sarcasm, humor. It also struggles with like essay length stuff still. I mean, it'll do it, but it struggles a little bit more than it does with shorter material. It doesn't really keep a structure. That's a big red flag when you see material submitted, that the structure's all bizarre, the format, or the way that it stops narrating and then just cuts to something else. And it doesn't have knowledge about very specific niche topics in all of the fields. It won't have that yet. Yeah.
So this summer, my colleague and I were literally texting and calling and talking to each other almost every single day, comparing our 2 online classes. He was teaching Intro to Hospitality Management. I was doing training, national certification training. And we were just blown away at how prolific our students, and he had a different set of students than I did, even though same department. And what came out was because, quite frankly, as I was saying earlier, I write all my material for people that work in the restaurant industry and don't want to go to school but are going to school. So I've drawn off of the experiential material, like what are your feelings, what are your opinions, what are your thoughts, share an experience that's similar to this, or what would you do if this situation occurred to you. And that's where Derek and I were able to see the complete 180-degree differences between the answers he was getting for his students and assignments and the answers and I was getting. I too had this one student that was like giving assignments, and so I emailed him. I said, we need to talk, we need to set up a meeting. I don't understand why your answers are like this. This seems like it's ChatGPT. Would you like to explain this to me? Because I'd be more than happy to discourage it. I will not grade you until we have a conversation. And I actually reached out to this student a couple of times. Needless to say, they did not respond back to me and wound up getting a whole bunch of zeros. But it was like, and then I wound up even putting an announcement that says, hey folks, ChatGPT will not interpret your feelings. You need to understand this.
That's a brilliant example, and I hope you can share with that, because I hope this kind of discussion continues. I think that's a great, the humanizing part of that. I'd love to see that. And I think, yeah, the prevention. Having an I say go for it. Have an announcement in there. It's not going to interpret your feelings. Yeah, Lisa.
With, both with Turnitin and the, in terms of both plagiarism and checking out ChatGPT, whether there's the AI looking at the exact things that were highlighted, but also ChatGPT is not good at giving examples. It will occasionally make stuff up, even quotes, names of characters.
Yep.
A really good way to tell, wait, this character is not in this book. And it can sometimes give some really good ideas, but all in a string with no evidence.
That's another great underscoring of to look at what your student is actually submitting closely, to look for those kinds of red flags. Robin, real quick.
For those of you that don't know, I am the dean that oversees conduct and discipline. And when students cheat or have discipline issues in the class, there needs to be a Maxiant form sent to the Office of Student Affairs. I send it out at the beginning of each semester. And then if it happens again, the student meets with me. But I want you to know, I help the students. Like, my goal is to help the students navigate what they're doing, get them through it. Oftentimes what I find is that they don't have their financial aid. Many of them don't have their accommodations through DSPS. They need mental health support, and we have a lot of resources now. But it's really important that you send that Maxiant document even for one occurrence, because typically what I see is this one student is doing it in other classes. And so the Office of Student Affairs and myself, we look at these and go, okay, there's a pattern here. So it's a Title V regulation, and I will send that link out again and all of the information. I'm going to wait till Monday to not overload your emails, but please send those in, because we watch them, we look at number of occurrences, and we look at where it's happening.
Thank you. That's an important reminder. So on this slide, when you get this presentation, it has further reading, because there's a whole bunch of reading. I saw somebody in front of me who had a ChatGPT article open in the Flex session. But also I wanted to mention that Elon Musk, I think? Elon, I always get that wrong, my son always bought AI.com, and Sam Altman and them had owned it. And so there was some sort of like power struggle there, and so now they have that. There's also these, yeah, Christy, real quick.
Well, one thing I'm concerned about is our students understanding that some instructors allow AI, some allow a little, some allow free reign, and some allow nothing. And so they're gonna be confused by that, and like as instructors, we need to explain why your policy is what your policy is, because there isn't a hard and fast rule about it, and we have academic freedom, and it's, I know you're gonna talk about this, it's useful in so many ways, and so our students, they're gonna need help for a while, like understanding this.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important point to make, and as a college, we need to come up with, and somebody was saying, maybe in our division meeting, maybe have a statement we can have, that we agree upon as college, or whatever, but I agree. It's important that, you know, that's why I didn't want to make this about, yay, ChatGPT or badge, or whatever it is. But I know that Claudette's going to talk about that.
Sorry, can I have 10 seconds?
Sure.
Yeah, and just so you know, for AI is not just for text. There are other programs out there for like Dolly that'll do graphics and other things for you
Yeah.
too.
Oh, I had a picture
So
of that. I forgot what
it's,
I did with that.
Mid-journey.
Yeah, anyway, just throwing that
Yeah,
out
the
there.
picture I had of the slide, I don't know what happened to that slide, but thank you for saying that, because I had a slide where it said, make me art with a cat astronaut on Mars or something, and it rendered that picture. Yeah.
Just a question about our policy on cheating. Not each individual faculty member's policy, but what do we do when the student says, prove it? Because I get that a lot.
I'm gonna put that to the person right next to you.
Actually, Robin and I and a couple of faculty had a meeting about this very topic, and you are experts in your disciplines. You know when something is well beyond the scope and level of your class. If someone's producing work that is so high, like graduate level work, we would like to trust your judgment and say, okay, Robin is very student focused when she has meetings with students, but if you believe that it is not their own work, you should still submit a Maxian report so that Robin can follow up and have a discussion. And of course, the direct discussion between the instructor and the student, as Cathy described, is perfect. But we're not going to, because all of those, the AI entries are going to change each time. So we're not going to be able to reproduce the sample text to show, to prove it. But you know, am I wrong? Do you know when your students are showing you work that's not yours?
You can tell by the
You know.
language. You
Yeah.
guys will be able to
You
tell
know
by the
it.
language.
Well, I'm actually not talking about text. In this situation, I'm thinking of, it was a student that took a 50-question test in 2 minutes and got 100%.
It does take those tests.
I would say, and
And I was not supported in failing that student on that test. Not by anybody, you know, here anymore, but I was shocked at that. And I want to be able to have the confidence to say in my syllabus, you know, it's my discretion. You know, that's what they pay me for.
so maybe in your, well, I was gonna say, typically, you could say something like, typically this will take you an hour. Please prepare an hour to do this 100-point question. And so then at least you have this, hey, this took you 2 minutes. I know this should take you 60 minutes. Maybe there, if you put in some language in that assessment that you know how long this would typically take, that could give you some weight. I'm just making that up because I've gone away from those types of assessments because if it's not OpenAI, it's
you name it. Last year, it was Chegg last year, right? All the answers are on the internet. How do I know? Because I Googled my own questions and I find them myself. So I go away from those. I totally have gone away from anything that ChatGPT or OpenAI or Chegg or Gary can sell to me online.
Gary.
I think in the essence of time, because I think we
Yeah.
can have a lot more discussion on this, Robin. I don't know if what you need to add, we can add later or whatever, but
It's just a quick piece that I want faculty to know. You have full management rights of your classroom, so when you refer a student to me, I don't try to override your decision, okay? So I want you to know I support faculty. If I uncover something in a process at a meeting with a student, I'll call and say, help, I want you to be aware that this happened, do you want to change your mind? But I'm in support of faculty making decisions, so I just want everyone to know that. Thank you.
So my name is Claudette Shatto. Before I get into it, I teach business. So for the last 6 months, I have fully embraced ChatGPT. I probably use it more than once a week. I love it. I grew up and went to college when I had to use microfiche. Google didn't exist. We didn't Google anything. We went to the microfiche with 10-cent coins into the library. So the first time that I Googled who is Abraham Lincoln, and I was able to land on Wikipedia, obviously, I was probably Yahoo or I don't know what it was back in those days. And I landed on Wikipedia that told me everybody who Abraham Lincoln was. Wow, right? Because we used to go to the microfiche. It's the same. The first time I put a prompt into ChatGPT, I got goosebumps. Wow, this is powerful and this is amazing. I'm treating ChatGPT like a new tool like Google is. So is it ridiculous for us to think that our students aren't using Google? Absolutely, right? Like 25, 30 years later, of course they're using Google. So this summer I presented to high school students and I asked high school students this question. So your teacher assigns you a report on Abraham Lincoln. Can you go into Google, type in who is Abraham Lincoln, land on Wikipedia, copy and paste it, and turn it in? And every single student said, no, you can't do that. I said, really? Let me ask you again, can you Google who is Abraham Lincoln, copy Wikipedia, and turn that in? No, you can't do that. And I said, actually, you can. You can do that. But there are consequences associated with doing that. It's unethical. You'll get an F. We all have plagiarism software systems. All of your teachers have them. We'll know that you're cheating. That's the same with ChatGPT. Is Google a tool? Yes. Is Wikipedia a tool to give you some ideas of who he is so that you can do your research? Yes. But should you still type up your own paper and have your own original work? Absolutely. Because if you don't, it's unethical. I feel the same when I'm writing blogs. If I want some ideas on what this blog is going to be about, I'll ask ChatGPT, this is the blog I'm writing, give me an outline on some, supporting topics on why this blog would be a good idea. Or I've written my blog, and then I say, help improve this. If you were to improve this blog, what would you do? And it's like, actually, you should have an example about, as a parent, how you do this, that, and the other. I'm like, thanks, ChatGPT, that's a great idea. By the way, you're going to notice I'm really polite to it. I talk really nicely to it. And that's one thing I do want to tell you. It's a learned skill how to talk to it. Just like we've learned how to talk to Alexa or how to talk to Siri, right? We've learned how to talk to this AI bot thing. I'm going to show you, it's really funny. You have to learn how to talk to ChatGPT to get what you want out of it. So I teach business. Of course I've embraced it. I've had to embrace it. So this summer, I completely gutted my business communications class, completely gutted it, incorporating ChatGPT. I'm going to show you what I did. There's 3 things that I did. I used it to create rubrics. I've used it to engage in discussion questions. I want the students to discuss ChatGPT. And I've used it to improve my original work. So in this class, the students, their project is they write a grant. So they partner with a nonprofit and they write a grant. They're not responsible for getting the money, but that is their research project. They have to do primary research, secondary research. They have to do persuasive communication. They have to have writing techniques, and so they write this grant. Well, I, over the last 8 years, have written my own homework assignments. These are what I wrote. This is last semester. So the original homework assignment looked like this. This is what I wrote by scratch. So what I did is I took all of my homework assignments that I wrote and I said, I am a college professor at a community college. I teach business communications. My students write a grant. I want you to take this assignment and improve it. That's what I prompted it. And so what it did, this is chapter 9, is it rewrote it for me, and my final product looks like this now. So it gave me an objective, it gave me the instructions, and it gave me my submissions requirements. So because I don't just copy and paste out of ChatGPT, I was like, ooh, I really like that. But my objective really should match what the objective is of the course outline, right? So then I adapted and I changed the objective to meet the course outline of record. I read through the instructions and I made it more easier, like I don't want it to have this frou-frou language that ChatGPT uses. So I made it more instructional for the student, exactly what I'm looking for. And then the submission requirements, right? So you can see that it really helped me improve my writing assignment. I really think that this is a much better writing assignment. I do want to show you, those of you guys that have never seen this, I do integrate, turn it in, right into my assignments. You don't see it yet, but the next thing I did was I created rubrics for every single homework assignment. In the old days, I had rubrics for the higher point assignments. Well, now I'm going to have rubrics for every single assignment. And I did that with ChatGPT. So you guys are going to laugh because you're going to see the way that I talk to ChatGPT. So Cathy showed you, this is what it looks like. You have to create an account, pardon me, and I had to learn how to talk to it to create these rubrics. And once I learned how to talk to it, then I was able to just bust out rubrics for every single assignment. So let me show you how it went down, our conversation. So this is the assignment. This is the full-on grant assignment. Can you create a rubric for this grant assignment? The grant is for 300 points. It has a cover letter, executive summary, do. So it says to me, sure, here it is, boom! It gave me this rubric. And I was like, no, this is what I said to it. Can you add 3 criteria? Meets requirements, need improvements, and incomplete. It says back to me, certainly. Here's an updated version of the rubric that includes meets requirements, needs improvements, and incomplete criteria. So it did what I asked for. Boom. And then I'm like, no, can you fill in the assessment of the quality of each criterion in the assignment? Certainly. Here's an example of the assessment. Okay, so you get it. And I'm like, no, I didn't want it in a point structure. So then I said, can you add the criterion description for each? So then it did it. It actually did it for me, but it did it in a weird format. It did it weird, right? So then I said to it, you guys, and I don't want you to think it's this complicated because I really geek out on this and I mess around with it. Can you put it in a table format? It did it. And this is what I was looking for. So now I know to say, can you put in a table format with these criteria that does this, this, and this, and that? Now I knew what I needed to tell it to get exactly what I was looking for. And then I realized it included the budget, which was optional, and that shouldn't be there, right? Because it's optional, so I couldn't give it 40 points. First I said, perfect, thank you. It said, you're welcome. I'm glad the table format suits your needs. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask. So then I was like, oh yeah, I do. I need you to remove the budget part of the rubric, please. I don't know why I'm so polite to it. But it's polite to me. Sure, here's the updated rubric with the budget part removed. And I scrolled down, sure enough, it removed it, but it went to 180 points. And I'm like, no, this is a 300-point assignment. So then I said, the total points should be equal to 300. Apologies for the oversight. You are right. Let me update the rubric and ensure that total points equals 300. So I finally got what I was looking for, and here is how I learned how to communicate with ChatGPT. You really have to learn how to talk to it. Do you want it in a table format? Do you want it in a CSV format? Do you want it in code? So you have to tell it who you are, I'm a college professor, what you're doing, and what you want the outcome to be. Those are the 3 things that you need to do when you're talking to it, what you want to do. So then I used it to literally create rubrics, once I understood how to talk to it, to create rubrics for every single one of my assignments.
I no longer think my students can cheat using ChatGPT.
Well, I'm glad I can show you that. So I teach business, so I can't deny that we don't use it in business. Yeah,
I have a question.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna take you back to, you said you use it to perfect
yeah.
your question. And I wanna know the specificity of that. Like, in what way did it perfect your assignment?
It gave me a learning objective, it gave me the specific instructions, and then it gave me the submission requirements, where I was just like, here it is, this is what I want you to do. And I really liked how, and especially because when I went through, what was that called that we went through? The poker, where I learned that I really should have learning objectives on every single assignment. And when I was handwriting my assignments, when I have textbook assignments, of course I have that, but when I'm writing assignments from scratch, I didn't have learning objectives. And then I was like, oh yeah, I need to do that, and I want to make sure that it relates back to the core. So I was in personally, I wrote these assignments. Instead of just saying, this is what I want you to do, it was like, this is your learning objective, these are what I want you to do, the instructions, and here's what your submission requirements should be.
So it gave you more structure and detail.
And clarity.
Okay, and then I want to ask you about the clarity part in terms of the language that it used. Did you go back, because you said you refined the language?
I did.
All right, so in terms of, it gave you more detail and more structure within the instructions so that the students knew what to do, but then in terms of the language, you reverted back to your language.
Not necessarily. I just read through it to make sure that it was very clear and it's what I wanted to say. It's what I said. It literally takes what you said and just improves upon it, in my opinion. Not always, I thought it was better formatted and better instructions rather than here's what you do. Which, I'm going to tell you, I've been teaching this class for 9 years and my students have been able to get it done. But I just want to be more aligned with academics, I guess.
Just a quick question, when you did when you had it, did you tell it you wanted the objective and that broke it down, or did it just want to do that?
Because it knows that I was a college professor, so I've asked it to do lesson plans for me, and it literally will always give you, when I've asked it to do lesson plans, I want a hands-on activity where the students learn this in this class, I'm a college professor, it will give you a learning objective every single time, it'll give you materials necessary, it'll tell you the instructions, and it usually, I can even say I have 60 minutes with the students, and it'll break out by time, how much time you should use on each activity. Literally, guys, play with this. Play with it to take what you already are doing and just improve on it, and it just gives you these really great ideas. So when I read that one lesson plan, I was like, oh yeah, I can do that. I'll just do it with chart paper, and I'll do it with marker pens, and that's just great. This will work really well.
I just wanted to add that I've been playing with it all summer, and you can really have, it will do whatever you tell it to do. I had it translate one of my assignments where students have to make a soundtrack relating to some other thing, and I just told it, just because it was late and I wanted to have fun, I'm like, now rewrite my instructions as in the style of East Coast rap.
Yeah, and
it totally did.
It will. Wow. I swear to you, it will. It's so
you can
fun,
go
guys.
that far. It will do. If it knows it, it will do it.
I geek out on it because it's so much fun things that you can do with it, and I'm having fun with it. So I want my students to have fun with it, but not. Okay, so I'll go there.
I again want to say that one of the positive things about it is it's sort of a creative partner. I'm really about originality, but I like someone that I can bounce ideas off of, and yes, I've made ChatGPT that someone. And so I can say, this is what I'm trying to do, and they'll give me ideas, And they're quite good.
They are.
And so it sort of makes, you keep going, wow, and it does make your brain kind of blow open to possibility to then make it yours.
Make it yours.
And for instance, many of you know that I'm a theater person, and I was trying to make a storm this summer with a team, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. So I kept putting it in, and we were going back and forth and arguing about what it could happen. And at the end, it said, now remember that theater is a collaborative art form.
Exactly.
And what was, I know it sounds so geeky and weird, but I needed to remember that and to trust my team. So are there some big trappings? Yes, but there's also some good if you can trust your own integrity in using it.
So I'm going to start my business communication class off really saying, hey, I know it's out there. Is it ethical for you to write your grant on ChatGPT? Absolutely not. Do I want you to learn how to communicate it? Absolutely. So here's an example of a discussion question.
And let me intercede really quickly. We started late, but there is
I'm almost done.
there is a time check, so if you do need to go, it's cool, but just letting you know.
What I really am going to lead them into is, yeah, you can use this as a tool of how maybe you might want to respond, but you absolutely need to have a human element. Customer service and in business, we still have to humanize our responses, and that to me is key. So I want to make sure that I'm partnering with my colleagues here, especially with my English department, because I don't want to erase everything you're doing. I want them to know how to write. I want them to know how to put together a sentence structure. But I also can't deny that this is a really good partner and a way to like, okay, how should I start this letter? But now let me make it my own and let me engage. So I've done a lot of work in ChatGPT this summer. I gutted my class. I've spent over 30 hours on this class just making it. So if you guys have any more specific questions, how else I'm using it in marketing and how I'm using it in my personal life, like planning trips to Disneyland with it, itinerary. I'm happy to engage and have further discussions with you about it.
Thank you all for coming.